I think I will always love the Junior Duck Stamp program because it was the foundation of much of what forms my favorite activities and interests today. My involvement in that program just really set me on paths of exploration that formed a foundational part of who I consider myself to be today. My Junior Duck Stamp story began around the end of 1997 as a 10-year-old. I found a advertisement for the program in the Missouri Conservationist magazine, and I'd enjoyed drawing and watching birds at our feeders for about as far back as I can remember. And so the opportunity to combine these two hobbies of mine into a fun challenge just immediately sparked my interest. But at the time, I had practically no knowledge of our wetland wildlife species. I knew of mallards and I knew of Canada geese, but that was really pretty much about it. But I was a young homeschooled kid and I loved reading, and my parents had always encouraged doing deep dives into my self-created educational research on topics that sparked my interest. So I immediately started reading up on all the different species of ducks that we have in the USA and where they can be found. And I was fascinated by all the variety and uniqueness of the different shapes and sizes and colors of the native wild duck species. I'd seen some of these in bird books before, but I'd always assumed that they were just exotic species that were, somewhere off in, distant parts. And so I'd never paid them much attention. I pretty quickly decided that I need to figure out a way to get some of my own photos of these and get some up close and personal experience to use as reference material. But I didn't think I'd be able to get close enough with the camera equipment I had at the time to the ducks in the wild. But I'd recalled seeing some ducks at the Bass Pro Shops in Springfield, Missouri that seemed reasonably tame and used to people. And so it got me thinking, well, where do they get their ducks? And so with a little further digging by my parents, we found a breeder that supplied captive raised wild duck species to both Bass Pro Shops and to zoos around the country. And so I believe my parents helped with some matching funds along with some of my savings that I'd earned from doing extra chores around the house and farm. And so I bought a pair of redheads and a pair of northern pintails to put on our pond. And then I got busy feeding them and taking pictures and doing practice drawings all winter. And so then the next spring, I submitted my very first entry to the Junior Duck Stamp program of a northern pintail. I think I was rather lucky in that the Junior Duck Stamp program was relatively new at the time, and so the competition wasn't as talented back then, because to my surprise, I ended up winning the Best of Show for the state of Missouri, despite the fact that I was only 11 at the time. And so that came with some nice prize money, and I immediately reinvested that into adding additional species to my private zoo. And my parents also helped build me a fenced and netted enclosure in the backyard with a small pond for them, as we'd lost some of the original ducks to some predators, and so I didn't want to lose any more. So I continued entering the junior competition every year all the way up through high school, and I continued to add to my collection of duck friends whenever I was able. So over the years, I ended up with wood ducks, all three species of teal, northern shovelers, American widgeon, hoodies, and then eventually fulvous whistling ducks. Once I got my driver's license, though, I also started trying to find these out in the wild as well. I got involved with my local Audubon Society chapter and went on outings with them to the wetlands in St. Louis and Columbia, Missouri, a few hours drive away. And so along the way, I ended up discovering other native bird species that, just like the duck species, I'd considered just exotic species included in the bird book as examples of fun birds from around the world. So things like, warblers and egrets and phalaropes and just a wealth of other things that I had completely missed out on just because I didn't realize that these were passing through my region every year. My own time as a junior duck stamp competition entrant came to a close when, in my last year that I was eligible, I ended up achieving my childhood dream of actually winning the national level of the junior duck stamp competition in 2004. And as part of the prize for that, they paid for the travel expenses for me to attend the first day of sale ceremony, as well as the judging of the federal duck stamp competition that fall. It was at the judging of the federal competition that I was completely hooked for life. just getting to see all of these amazing paintings up close and personal, and talk to a few of the artists who were in attendance. So that I knew immediately at that point that rather than this being the end of my time with the duck stamp competition, it was the beginning of something, lifelong. In the 20 years since then, I've attended in person around 10 times. And every year that I'm not able to attend in person, I am closely watching the live stream. Every year that I've been able to, I've entered. Hasn't been every year, but whenever I can, I love to get an entry into the Federal Duck Stamp Competition. But the influence of the contest also had a lot wider impact than just myself. Through my own interest in the competition, my parents and all my siblings learned a lot about wetlands and ducks and our native bird species, and even the ones that didn't have much inherent personal interest in the subject. Several of my siblings did really nice entries for the junior competition themselves a few times. And to me, a really key example of what the Junior Duck Stamp program brought to our lives is an example from a story a couple of years ago. I was looking to collect some more hooded merganser reference material in the wild for the federal competition that year. And I had mentioned this to my family, and one of my brothers chimed in, "Oh, we've actually been seeing some of those in the creek near my house every morning." And it turns out he and his family had been watching them every morning, coming and going from their house. So I went down and spent the night, went out the next morning at sunrise to get some photos of the ducks that were there in his neighborhood. But it occurred to me that even though he didn't have nearly the same level of interest in birds that I do, he and his family were much more aware of the native wild duck species that were in their region than I had been when I was his kid's age. And that's all thanks to the Junior Duck Stamp program, just broadening my entire family's experience to more than just the birds at our backyard feeder. And so I intend to continue to do my best to spread that awareness and enjoyment to others. And I just like to say thank you to the Junior Duck Stamp program for bringing that to my awareness in the first place.